So one, we wanted just to restate the problem. And we understand that FRC wants to create safe, secure, and efficient rail transportation. However, right now they've been given a budget that's substantially higher, $8 billion, as compared to the 60 or 70 we had before. And we want to develop key criteria that are going to be able to identify viable candidates for this grant. Now, we want to identify the stakeholders first. We have Congress and the President's office, knowing that they'll be evaluating the criteria and the projects themselves. We want to ensure that these are viable candidates and that these interests are held into account. Also, we have the National Transportation Safety Board, recognizing that they'll also be evaluating the projects that go forth. State and local governments are going to be key in making sure that, also this goes into regional associations, that they're key in making sure that the routes that are chosen, that projects can go through. We have environmental and civil rights groups, and of course the developers themselves.
Okay, we wanted to start off talking about our criteria by highlighting safety. All these criteria are going to be judged from the grant writing process from the view of a point system as well as a tier system that will be explained as we get further along in our presentation. First in our category of safety is obviously passenger safety, which is a very critical and important part of any kind of a development like this. But specifically, that ties into some of these other areas like police and emergency response, even some of the security concerns that the passengers are going to have to deal with as they board the train and use the facilities. Also, there are issues with structural safety that we want to make sure that the grant writers are identifying, such as fences, electrical equipment, the trains themselves, and how they're designed. There's also going to be environmental issues as well as regional issues, such as when you divide a community in half, how are you addressing the issues of pedestrian traffic or vehicles?
And also, we recognize that community development is going to be integral in any grant proposal that we receive. One method that grant applicants can receive points for would be to have a community benefit agreement. This ensures that the community has been, the citizens at large, their needs have been represented, and that they feel like they're a part of the program and a part of the process. We also want grant applicants to identify measures that will spur economic development. So we don't only want them to acknowledge that this will happen by osmosis, but what things are you putting into place, for instance, retail locations that will spur economic development in the surrounding areas. Also, we recognize that by having the high-speed rails, that they will open access to new economic markets. We also want to see how this will be addressed. So we want grant applicants to be supporting local markets, which will feed into the overall economy of the municipalities that will be along the way. We want to make sure that there are job creation numbers that are, and specific benchmarks that are being reached. And also, when we look at ridership, we want to make sure that you're looking to have passengers go to other areas, and that you're looking for not only, if we're doing Las Vegas to LA, not only that you're looking for ridership from the larger locations, but within those as well.
Our third criteria will deal with the financial plan that's submitted by grant applicants. Primarily what we'll be looking for are projected ridership rates and competitive fare pricing. We'll also be looking at a budget in terms of how efficient is their budget, and this can be broken down to units of cost per mile. We'll also expect an economic forecast. Basically, this would show the net effect of the railroad system in an area along the route versus in specific cities themselves. Furthermore, we'll give extra points for developers and grant applicants who propose innovative commercial entrepreneurship opportunities and revenue-raising opportunities that will be produced by having a high-speed train. And finally, in terms of the funding structure, we want to look at grant applicants in terms of where are they getting the additional money, aside from the grant that we're providing, whether this money is going to come from private investors, state or county investors, and whether those additional monies will be encumbered by some purpose that is different from the Federal Rail Commission. For example, with economic forecasting, if there's a train traveling from California to Nevada, economic development would be measured in each city along the way, along each stop, and then the economic forecast would encompass the entire net effect of the entire trade system.
And the last criteria is management structure. We want the grant applicants to develop phase development plans. At this point, it is important to mention that the grant payments will be based on completed phases of the project. Also, we require the grant applicants to present reporting structures which will rely on third-party watchdogs. Finally, it is important for us that the project will be sustainable in the long term. That's why we ask the grant applicants to present sustainability plans that will guarantee the operation of the train and the proper maintenance duties.
Some of the assumptions we've made in developing these 4 criteria are that there is, first of all, a diverse market that is open and readily available to accommodate high-speed train program. Furthermore, that the FRC staff is adequate and able to review grant applicants and provide the necessary oversight in the grant application process. Furthermore, that grant applicants will bear the responsibility and embrace the responsibility of finding outside funding and not just simply rely on grant funding provided by the FRC. Furthermore, assuming that we'll meet again with the FRC, we hope to incorporate a scoring schedule in terms of harder numbers. I know right now it's pretty abstract, but given more information, we can provide you with hard numbers in terms of benchmarks. As mentioned before by Kendall, our point system is weighted to reflect political and social values. So therefore, safety and community development are ranked at 30% each, while financial planning and management strategy are ranked at 20%. And we would score the grant applicants on a wider range of points, so that way we could accommodate for differently situated grant applicants and also require a minimum requirement for each criteria. Finally, on top of this scoring and point system is a tier system. We want to make sure that grant applicants are compared with similarly situated grant applicants, and so we're not comparing a train that's traveling from Los Angeles to Sacramento with one going through the Dakotas.
So we also want to make sure that our grant applicants are identifying certain areas that they're going to have trouble dealing with, such as the phase development. If the project is made to hold too stringent a plan, it can cause problems with a developer abandoning the project, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So the way to avoid that, obviously, is to make sure that the developer is involved in part of that process, so that those expectations are clear. Interstate relationships and rivalries, as well as regional issues, can be a barrier to making something like this work, making it feasible. Getting zoning accomplished through regional areas is difficult sometimes. Sustainability is a very large issue, and we want to make sure our grant applicants are dealing with this so that they know that they are going to have to make sure that this system can take care of itself in the long run, and that they are not coming back to the federal government to fund it.
As for the constraints, we are aware that some governments could refuse to do the project because the construction period takes longer than the election cycle. Also, we have some financial constraints related to the sustainability of the project. But at this point, we want to make sure that each grant applicant develop funds beyond the grants. Also, we have some legal constraints related to interstate coordination, contractual resortments, regional right-of-way. And so, as for that community buy-in, that one is really important for us because we are aware that communities with a strong voter turnout may reject the project. Also, we could face some environmental problems, and this potentially could lead to litigation, which could write up costs. So, thank you for your time. If you have any questions.
With regards to sustainability, how would that be assessed?
We want to make sure that they were looking at issues of, for example, we brought up entrepreneurship, in the commercial sector. So perhaps they could have something in place with FedEx where they're also transporting packages between point A and point B. Some of the real estate kind of issues where they're building a train station, they could have rental properties for commercial usage, as well as looking at bond measures, or I guess bond measures would probably be more on the funding side. Sustainability would have to address taxation to subsidize like you would for a bus system.
And again, this is where the point system will come into play. So grant applicants who have obviously more commercial opportunities and who have looked into this in more detail would grade higher than an organization who hasn't.
Could you roll back to, I think, the externality slide? Yeah. And my question is, I might not articulate this correctly the first time, so I might need a couple of shots at it. So you've laid out a number of 4 major buckets for which you're going to evaluate the grant applications. But I think we were talking about this slide and maybe some others. You talked about some items I think that sounded more like requirements that you would impose that wouldn't be scored. Am I correct in that? And I think it's a good idea, but what I was trying to do is determine, or I think in certain cases, I think you were proposing some minimum requirements that grant applicants, and they wouldn't be scored, right? So correct. I think that part of the Deloitte approach is going to be help us through the 4 buckets of scoring, and then with the sub-scoring, we understand that you didn't have enough time today to develop the subcategories of scoring. You're going to help us score this application. But I think also your proposal includes some mandatory minimums, if you will, that every grant applicant will be expected to adhere to, and they wouldn't be scored.
Absolutely.
They would be program sort of requirements.
For example, there are issues in safety that you have to have minimum requirements that they're going to have to meet. For example, there are OSHA requirements during construction that you just simply have to meet, and there is no option of, do I meet it well enough? It's just you meet it or you don't.
Right.
And if you don't meet it, then we can't give you money.
Okay.
Kind of idea.
All right. So like we're gonna get both the scoring framework, but you're also proposing a few
minimum requirements.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
Roll back for our buck. I had one other question to follow, and this is totally unfair, right? So you're not gonna get scored on this one.
Okay.
With respect to sort of those mandatory minimums, would you also help us, or could you propose because if I'm thinking about the locality who needs this money, who wants this rail system, and I'm going to, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to comply with every mandatory minimum. But how would you propose going forward? We monitor, or should we monitor or measure that? Or
that's part of that's part of the phase development.
Okay.
And the phase development allows us to enforce some of these kinds of things. And originally, part of the plan for phase development was that, say you have a train running from LA to Sacramento, and you're doing, a developer might think, well, I have this open space, and this open space. It'll be really easy to get started on those. And so that's what they would do for cost effectiveness. Whereas from a political point of view, getting that run from LA to Bakersfield, for example, up and running as fast as possible while you're working on the other stuff allows community buy-in, start generating revenue, and other kinds of things like that. But also, to answer your question, it allows us to see how you're meeting those minimum standards and whether or not you are meeting them. And if you're not, then we can use that money that you're waiting for the next part of the project as a leverage to get you to do the things you're supposed to be doing as a developer.
I think I must have just missed the phase development slide. I'm sorry if I spaced.
No, that's fine.
And also, we did that as an enforceability measure, so that it's scheduled grants disbursement.
Okay.
And so
great. Okay.
he would get the first part of the grant from LA to Bakersfield, and then the remainder from Bakersfield to Sacramento.
Don't assume that it's a him. It might be a her.
I'm sorry, or it might be a her.
Or maybe a they.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, I'll stop. I think nice job. I really appreciate the effort in, short turnaround. Very
Thank
nice
you very
job.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
But if you do have any other questions, I
Yeah,
am
we
interested
can-
just to hear, we want to hear some holes that we might have missed or.
I think what we'll do when we, what we typically do is give sort of the group feedback. 'Cause as we go through the presentations, some areas of improvement will emerge. And I don't want to like direct in any particular team and have you think, gosh, we missed this, we screwed up. We'll give it as a group feedback.
Okay.
One thing I will do, say is I thought, one, I like this phased approach. I missed it. It just, and the other thing that I liked was in your assumptions. You told us what you expect of us, and I'll tell you that we do that all the time in our proposals because it's a joint effort. And while we're paying you to do the work, you guys recognize that for you to be successful, there's some stuff you're going to hold us to as well.
Sure.
And you included at least one assumption about our ability, I think, to review the grant applications. So I would say those were. And I'm not going to do the development stuff because again, I think it's unfair. I don't want to. You guys everyone's doing a great job. I don't want anyone to walk out of here thinking like you missed something. But I will say that those are two things that I think really struck me as pretty insightful and a nice job. I don't know if there was anything else, but those things really hit me. Writing proposals all the time. I don't know if it was prior consulting experience or not, but when you made that assumption, telling us what you are expecting us to do, we do it all the time. It's the only way we can be successful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.